All right, so now we know we can access packages built by other people that are hosted on PyPI or Anaconda. We can install those onto our computer. So now we have available to us external libraries or even standard library, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. These are built-in functionalities provided by Python when you install Python, or even like the hello.py module that I created. So we have access to this code, but what we need to do is we need to import it into our current Python session, right? And we can do this in a couple of different ways. For example, there is a package, or I guess you could say a library that comes with Python when we install it. And it's called the OS, the operating system. And it just allows us to do a bunch of functionality to work with our operating system. It just simplifies that process. So this library is called OS, right? And if we want to access any functionality in that module, we can just do import OS. And what that's going to do is it's going to go out to our library location on our computer, and it's going to identify this library, and it's going to import that functionality for us. So now the nice thing is, once we've done that, we have direct access to any of the different functions that are provided by OS, right? So I could find, I think here is a get working or get my current working directory. So when I run that function, it's just going to tell me what is the current working directory that I am working out of. Okay. So we import our module, and now we have access to any of the functionality provided by that module. All right, so when we do this importing procedure, we can actually do this a few different ways, okay? Now, one way is kind of what we did here with OS, right? We can import some module and preserve what we call the module namespace. Right. What that means is, for example, in the slide here, you see I import NumPy. Now, once I've done that, I can access any function within there or any item that's provided by that module by calling the full name and then dot and then whatever the item is, whether it's a function or a variable or so on. Right. So in here, you can see that I called NumPy. There's a function in there called cos. And I call that function and I apply it to an object provided by NumPy, which is .py, okay? So we can do that. And when we do that, just every time we're trying to access some functionality from this NumPy module, I need to specify the full name of that module and then dot and whatever the functionality is I'm trying to get. Now, we will often see a lot of the modules that we import. It's common to import them with what we call an alias. And that means we just want to have a shorthand reference to that package. A good example is NumPy is almost always imported as NP, right? So now anytime we want to reference what we imported or some functionality from the module we imported, we reference the alias, not this name, right? So now, instead of what we have up here, to run this code, we reference NP. So we want to get the cos function from NP, and we want to get the py object from NP as well, right? So this is just altering the name that we're going to use to reference that module whenever we want to access something from that module. Now, we can also just simply import the specific things that we want from the module, right? So in these last two examples, we only use two things from NumPy. We use the cosine function and we use the py object, right? So rather than basically importing the whole module where we have access to everything, we can actually just import specific items from that module, right? So here from the NumPy module, we import just the cosine function and the py object, and now we can always reference those directly without having to prefix those with either NumPy or the alias. All right, so those are the three common ways that you will see folks importing functionality from external modules. Now, there are other ways we can do this, and there's one that you will see sometimes. And we call this implicit importing. And what's happening here is we're saying from NumPy, right? So what we saw here in this last example, to import these specific items, we say from this module, I want to import these objects, okay? Now, a difference here is from NumPy, import, and then I have this asterisk. And that means import everything, right? So all of the objects or functionality provided by that module will get imported into your local environment. And the problem with that is it is not uncommon for different modules to have objects or functions that are named the same, right? For example, in the lesson reading, you will actually see that NumPy has a sum function that it provides. And when you do this, when you import everything from NumPy, now that NumPy sum function overrides the built-in sum function provided by Python. And they actually behave slightly different. And so if you do this, but then you go and you use sum, you need to realize you're using the NumPy sum. You're not using the built-in Python sum because that was overridden by this import procedure. So we generally frown upon this, and I would say move away from this as much as possible. Be much more explicit with what you are importing and how you are referencing different objects. And we can do that using one of these three options.